Hi, welcome back, welcome in again. It's Hamish Taylor here with another quick video on a subject that we talk about all the time in clinic. Following on slightly from the normal range video that I would certainly recommend you watch, and I'll put a link in the description below so you can go back to that one if you haven't watched it yet. And that was talking very briefly about the difference between normal ranges and optimum ranges. So this video is going to be all about HbA1c. Now, you may never have heard of HbA1c, but that is the marker that lots of GPs and obviously clinicians around the world use to discuss whether you have diabetes or not. So please refer back to the normal ranges just briefly, because that will put this into context. Now, as always, here's a disclaimer for you to read at your leisure, and we will crack straight on with this understanding of HbA1c. Now, HbA1c is a good marker to understand where your blood sugar is over time. So what is HbA1c? Well, we don't need to go into a huge amount of detail about that, but it's essentially a measure of how much glucose has been bonded or bound to your hemoglobin molecule. So hemoglobin is part of the chemistry in your red blood cells that helps to carry oxygen around the body, and a measure of how much sugar is attached to that, how much glucose is attached to that, is a very good marker of how your blood sugar management is. Now, it's important that this is not personal advice. As I said, you've got to get your own results right and understand them, but essentially it works. HbA1c works like an average, and it tends not to be tested more regularly than every 3 months. And it's also quite important, if you can get it tested, to get it tested to a decimal place. Very often in the UK, we only get the marker tested to a whole number, and that's quite difficult to sometimes explain and explore changes in that, because obviously if your HbA1c goes from, let's say, 38 to 39 over a course of 3 months, you don't know it's gone from 38.1 to 39.9 or 38.9 to 39.1. And obviously that's quite a big difference and plays quite a big role in taking things forwards. Right, HbA1c. This is a naturopathic and functional approach to this, so let's not underestimate how important to getting the HbA1c right is. The way the NHS in the UK and the way conventional medicine understands blood sugar in relation to diabetes goes roughly something like this. It's two cliff edges. I hope that edits out okay, but we'll see. We've got this first point, and then we've got this second point, and then we've got another cliff. And I can see that we've got a bit of reflection on there. Let's try and get that off. And my cliff isn't very good, so I'm going to redraw that here. This is all part of the learning. Right, that looks like a better cliff. And I'm going to get my red pen for this one, because it is important. This represents the way that the NHS tends to understand HbA1c as cliff edges. And here we've got 41.9, or often 42. And here we've got 47.9 and often 48. And this is the marker of HbA1c. And technically, once you've reached here, which of course is the same as here with this cliff edge, you are suddenly diabetic. And if you have reached this point here and you're on this cliff edge here, you are suddenly pre-diabetic. But there's another marker that lots of us don't consider, and it is important to recognize. And that's on here, 37.7. And that is very safe up on this upper cliff edge where we want to be. And the reason why I'm using cliff edges and going back to the NHS and how it's not got it quite right. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not an NHS bashing video. It's just recognizing the big difference treating a whole nation as what you can do when you get individualized care and actually take responsibility for what's going on. Basically, diabetes or all the problems with diabetes start if you get past 37.7. Now, of course, they don't start quickly after that level, but they go a bit like this. And that's what we've got to be careful of. And I can see it goes off the bottom of the screen here, which is nothing but appropriate. And the point that I'm driving at here is that the further along this red line you get, biochemistry doesn't normally happen in cliff edges, i.e. great big jumps or falls. Unless you really have fallen off a cliff or you've been in a car accident, then clearly your chemistry changes very quickly indeed. But in this lifespan chemistry, it tends to be a bit more like this. And HbA1c and the diabetes marker that we've got here is very representative of that. So what I'm driving at here is understanding the difference between optimal and these normal ranges. And if you are sitting somewhere on this curve, clearly the further we go this way, the further you're going to be going down this way. And that's not acceptable for me as a clinician helping someone manage their blood sugar levels. But you could argue that 38 is okay, sure, but we start seeing that creeping up a little bit. We don't know if it's 38.1 or 38.9, and that's starting to have a big difference. Now, when I was taught my biochemistry and my physiology way back quite a long time ago now, there was a simple saying that one of the clinicians teaching us said, if you can truly understand everything that happens and that goes wrong with the body, with diabetes, you don't need to learn any other biochemistry. Essentially, when your blood sugars go wrong, they affect everything. And anyone with a family member with diabetes will know that it affects your nervous system, your energy levels, your ability to throw off infection. Urine infection is often a problem. Your inflammatory markers are often a challenge. Heart problems, all sorts of circulatory issues. I'm not going to waste time on this video. You go and look them up yourself. There's nothing that poor blood sugar management doesn't negatively impact. So I hope this serves as a brief understanding of why it's important to keep your blood sugars safely, if you like, inside the viewing car park at the top of this cliff, and making sure that you're not venturing too far over towards these cliff edges, because no one in nature would walk too close to a cliff edge, especially if they didn't know it. But don't be fooled to thinking that 40 is okay, and don't be fooled in thinking that, oh, it was 38 a year ago and now it's 40, but it's still within this normal range. It hasn't reached 41.9 yet. Look at how your markers might progress over time. And it's interesting to recognize that what we've got is a situation where often the markers are only published just as a singular marker, and that's not okay. We need to see what was going on previously. So make sure you keep your own chart of your own records with your markers over time, and then you can see if you're progressing in the wrong direction and potentially getting closer to what the NHS would consider your cliff edge, but actually physiologically and anatomically, the impacts of that are actually on this very slippery slope, this or exponential downward curve. And that is absolutely not what we want, because if you're down here, you have got one hell of a cliff to climb back on from a biochemical point of view. It is completely doable, and I will finish this video with a simple statement. In the vast majority of cases, type 2 diabetes is A, preventable, and B, reversible. So get yourself in front of a good clinician, get yourself motivated, and haul your blood sugar and your HbA1c levels back to below 38, and that will be awesome, and you will not regret the improvement in your health on every level that then ensues as a result of that. So don't underestimate the importance of keeping your blood sugars right. Keep an eye on these normal level markers marching in the wrong direction and still being considered normal. Don't underestimate how important it is to keep them in this optimum range. Hope that's been useful. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.